Thank you so much, and take it away. Oh, one more thing, please, guys. If you have a question, private, type it in the chat. Private, send it to me, and I will stop Joseph if it is pertinent to the point he's touching, or we will reserve it to the end. At the end, of course, turn in your mic, jump in, talk, right? But if you have a question in the middle of this presentation, text it to me, and I can stop Joseph and ask the question.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Raphael, for the kind words. And I think people should know that you actually served on my dissertation committee. I'll always appreciate that, and provided me lots and lots of good advice. So
I will take all the credit. No,
that was very kind.
It was really nothing. It was really great.
No, it was great. All those words of wisdom that continue to this day. So we've been longtime colleagues, and I do visit UCD quite often. I have great respect for your department folks. I was actually going to be there in February, and it sounds like another lifetime ago, but in February we had a big snowstorm, and I was up at CU Boulder, and I was about ready to come down to Denver, and Raphael said, "Joseph, the campus is closing." So then we scheduled it for a month later. And of course, we all know what happened at the end of March. So this is the third time we've tried this, and now we're actually doing it. So thanks for being tenacious, Raphael. And I'm looking forward to interacting with you folks, not just for the next 3 hours. Oh, I'm just kidding. We don't have 3 hours. For the next small portion of time, but in the future. As Raphael said, if you students out there, if I can be of any benefit to be in your network, please connect with me on various channels. I'd love to be in your network. And I think it's important while you're still a student to actually start developing that professional network. Even if you're an undergraduate student, it's never too early really to start that. So find someone in private industry like me, find someone in academia, your professor mentors there at UCD, find someone in a nonprofits, find someone in a government agency, etc. So build that professional network. I think you'll find, and I'm sure your professors have said this, that the geospatial geography community is extremely generous and with their time and their expertise. You almost never meet anybody that is really standoffish and that doesn't want to share. We're all about making a better world is really what it's all about. Building a more sustainable, healthier, happier world, which is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. But as Raphael said, my YouTube channel is called Our Earth. And if there's anything on there that you find valuable, I'm going to touch on a couple of the topics, Raphael, that you mentioned in terms of 5 skills that I think are important going forward in this decade. But that's the Our Earth channel. I also have a blog that stemmed from that book that Raphael mentioned earlier, and that's called the Spatial Reserves Data Blog. And I know those of you that are listening to this, maybe as the recording or listening live right now are thinking, "Oh, Joseph, well, I can't stand the excitement. Oh, it sounds like the most boring blog in the world." Well, it's a dry topic, admittedly, but my whole theme there is it's great that we have all these wonderful tools at our fingertips, right? For example, we can be in ArcGIS Online, and we can say, well, gosh, wouldn't it be great? Okay, I've got the world population density. Okay, interesting. And now I want to pull up a current issue. Okay, wildfires. Oh gosh, there's one that's actually this one right behind me. This scene right behind me is this Pine Gulch incident. So all that ridge that's behind me in Mesa County, Colorado, that's all burnt. That's all been on fire for weeks. Fortunately, it's just smoldering right now. But the point is, we can pull up data with these live feeds from the Internet of Things and from various sensor networks and from various citizen science organizations and individuals, and we can pull up these data layers. Gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could pull up, are there any active hurricanes right now? So I can just, in ArcGIS Online, for example, pull these things kind of, in what about globally? What's going on globally? Are there any? Oh, okay. So the point is, do you know where all those data layers came from? Can you trust them? Do you know what scale they were created at and how often they're updated and what the methodology is to crunch the data before they were made into a web mapping service? You know what I mean? So that's the point. We've got these amazing tools at our fingertips now. Truly. I mean, Raphael and I used to sit around in the 1990s going, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had like a data library that was online and we could just pull data from? Well, we're there. It's an exciting time for you all to be in geography and geospatial technologies, but be critical of the data. And that is the whole point of this data blog. So I've got posts in there that come out every week about not just where to find data, but be critical of it, and some location privacy and other social issues involved with geospatial technologies. So if that's of interest, feel free to check that out. Also, I wanted to mention, you can see on this screen right here, I've got a standard CV. And one of the practical things that I wanted to share with you all, and perhaps you've heard this from your professors as well, so no worries. I've got a standard CV, like you probably have, you know, with accomplishments and et cetera, okay? But I also have a story map. I have my CV as a story map. So you might want to think about doing that. There's several reasons why I think that might be compelling. A, it gets you into the tools. It gets you into web mapping tools and web mapping applications. Oh, look at this, Australia. Good on you, mate. She'll be right. The 12 Apostles rocks. Another thing, though, you can put some geeky pictures of yourself, like me lying on a big map. But more importantly, you're getting into the geospatial tools, and you're practicing using those tools. And you could put a web map in there about, you know, places that you've been and things that you did. Well, okay, I went to UCD, I had an internship over here, I got my first position over here, I went to grad school at UCD, or whatever it is that you want to highlight. And you can update it quarterly or however often you want to. See what I mean? And so then your standard CV, like mine here, you know, I've got a standard one, but you can point to the story map, and your potential employer would say, hey, they know something about web mapping applications because here's their story map. So, and it's your own personal story. So it's kind of a fun way for you to get into multimedia mapping with the Story Maps platform. So I wanted to just encourage you to do that. Okay. Now, one of the things that I wanted to focus on today, after talking to Raphael over these, you know, we've been planning this for 7 months now, but to really focus in on why are we doing what we're doing? Yes, I talked about your skills that I'm going to mention in a bit about what skills are important moving forward. And yes, I'm going to talk about the fact that it's a really exciting time to be in geography and geotechnologies for various reasons. But the main reason is because these tools and this spatial thinking that is behind the tools is incredibly relevant to today's 21st century world, correct? I mean, look at it this way. If people didn't know what a infographic and a dashboard and a live interactive web map back in February was, they sure do now, right? They sure do now, because people have been consuming the JHU coronavirus dashboard by the millions per hour. Elevator speech or your stairwell speech for someone that says geography, is that a thing? Can you major in that? Right? You've probably gotten that. That's one of the things that I actually now, hey, well, have you looked at any of those dashboards and those interactive maps? And they weren't in, they county or your local organizations, they weren't just put there because they exist. They're put there because people want them. People want to make decisions based on that information. So it is a very exciting time to be in geotechnologies. I wish it hadn't taken a crisis for a lot of people to realize the value of geospatial technology and spatial thinking. But I think going forward, it's never going to be the same again in many ways in society, right? But one of the ways is that perhaps that elevator speech of yours, or that stairwell speech, or your board of directors speech, or your CEO speech doesn't have to be as long anymore, because people will, the geo-awareness, which I'll talk about in a moment, is at an all-time high, the geo-awareness. So that is one thing that I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention concerning the current health issue is that these tools are accessible to you, right? So if you go to the JHU coronavirus dashboard, you see that dashboard, and I think we all know about that. I'm not going to spend time there right now. That's getting a live feed. Now, I created a similar dashboard on walkability. That's something I'm really passionate about. How walkable is your community? So I created something that combines 4 different pieces of this platform. First of all, what is walkability? Okay, it's the degree to which pedestrians feel safe and able to walk in their community. Why are people caring about that? And then inside this story map, I have a survey 1, 2, 3, where I say, okay, now that you know a little bit about walkability, please fill out this survey. It's open to the public. It's crowdsourced. It's citizen science enabled. And so is this location pedestrian friendly or not? Rate it on a Likert scale. tick all the choices, branches, snow, wide path, dangerous intersection, whatever it is. And then of course, what you and I care about the most, where is it? And then do you have a photo of it? Okay, so that survey is inside the story map. Now, after you fill that out, it's a live feed, so it's going to populate this map. And so I've got points on here that I and others have collected. This is one of mine in Australia. Very pedestrian friendly, good for kangaroos as well. But the point is that map, right, is being fed from the survey. And then after that, I've got this. I've got a dashboard. And as the name implies, and some of you have probably created a dashboard, think of the dashboard in your car. You get a lot of information in a short amount of space. That's just like these geotechnology-enabled dashboards. So I've got the live embedded web map in here. I also have a couple of pie charts. A third of the places so far of the 395, you can see this gauge, 395 points have been submitted to this survey. I've got about a third of them now that are unfriendly and 2/3 are friendly. Okay, and then here are the characteristics, and I've got a legend and an image, and that's it. So this dashboard took me about an hour, okay, to create. The JHU coronavirus dashboard took several days. And one kind of cool thing about that, by the way, that you may know the story of, especially you graduate students out there, is a graduate student actually created that whole thing, you know, with some input from the professor. But the point is, you can do great things as a graduate student. So the point is, this tool is the same tool that is at your fingertips in this ArcGIS platform as the folks at Johns Hopkins used, okay? And pick a topic that you're interested in. It could be litter, it could be invasive species, it could be water quality, it could be walkability, whatever. You've got these tools at your fingertips. So this is connecting 4 different pieces of this web-enabled platform. Story maps, a live interactive web map, a dashboard, and a survey, the survey 1, 2, 3. So a simple example, but hopefully effective. So that is all about why, you know, why we are in the current situation that we're in. We have a lot of tools and data at our fingertips, but remember, be critical of the data and the methods that you're using. So to me, it comes down to what's where, why is it there, and why should we care? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? That is, to me, what geotechnologies and geography are all about. So I've got a little quiz for you. I want you to think spatially. All right, you didn't think you were going to be tested on a Friday afternoon, or whenever you're going to be watching this, but here's a quiz. Location P and location Q, they're taken at latitude and longitude intersections. Okay, somewhere in Colorado. Okay, so here's photo number 1. Was it taken at location P or location Q? Here's photo number 1. So, okay, you're looking at the landscape, you're looking at the geomorphology, the vegetation, and here is photo number 2. One of those was taken at P, one of those was taken at Q. Which one was taken at P? Where's the chat box?
Turn on your mics and jump in.
Yeah, or you could just type in the box, whatever. Which one was taken at photo location P? Is it photo number 1 or photo number 2? Which one was at P? Ooh, someone's inputting here. Very cool. So you're looking at, okay, they're not too far apart. They're both in western Colorado. One of them looks a little bit drier than the other one. Interesting. Okay, well, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to give you the answer here. Photo number 1 is at Q. Photo number 2 is at P. So photo number 1 is at 39 north, 108 west. Photo number 2 is at 40 north, 109 west. A little bit drier just west of Rangeley there. Now let me give you another one. This is even harder because I know you're the UCD community. You're top notch. You're in a very good program with some very good professors. So I want to give you some challenge here. Okay, photo number 3, is that at R or S? Ooh, now we're on the sort of the southeast part of Colorado. Photo 3, these are all photos I took. Photo 3, R or S? And here's photo 4, R or S. Interesting. I could zoom in there, right? I've got the ability. I've got an interactive map here at my fingertips. Okay. Makes it a little easier, doesn't it? So now you can see that, let me check the chat box. Okay, excellent. So photo number 3 is S. Photo number 3 is S. Photo 4, rockier, steeper, is at R. You can see the terrain down there at R. Photo number 3 is actually not too far from Rocky Ford on the Great Plains. You can see that. Fascinating. Okay, so you're thinking spatially. You're looking at climate, landforms, vegetation, terrain, etc. All right, very good. Now, Raphael mentioned this, and I just wanted to frame this in terms of, why should you listen to what Joseph has to say? Well, we're all in this together. I don't have the end-all, be-all words of wisdom on these topics that we're going to address today. But as Raphael mentioned, I've been in 4 different sectors of society: nonprofit, academia, private industry, and government. And so think about, what pathway do you want to take? What organizations fit your own personal ethos? Okay? Do your homework. Find an organization that really, as close as possible, matches what you want to do. And so the position that I'm on, the ESRI education team, is really in service to all of you. Consider us your partners as you journey through the education world. So we work with professors, graduate students, facilities managers, deans, provosts. What we want to do is support the deeper and the wider use of geospatial technology in education. The deeper part is the whole platform, as I mentioned with my walkability survey. Having people do coding, having people develop web mapping applications, going out in the field and collecting data, analyzing it spatially, etc. So that's the deeper part. Not, I'm teaching version X of software Y. Okay, but are you doing the whole platform is the point. And the wider part is, even though I'm a geographer, and many of you are as well, probably most of you are, I'm not going to neglect my own peeps. I'm not going to give up working with the geographers and the environmental scientists and the geologists and the geomorphologists and those folks. But one of my strong goals is the wider part. I feel so strongly about spatial thinking and geotechnologies. I feel it needs to be in all business programs at universities and community colleges, tribal colleges, et cetera, even in high schools, and in health programs, and economics, and sociology, and criminal justice, and et cetera, right? Everybody's asking the where question in some ways, and they could benefit by your expertise, right? Geotechnologies and spatial thinking. So that's the broader part. I'm not going to rest easy until it's pervasive throughout education. So deeper and broader. And the swinging back to our discussion about finding an organization that fits your own personal goals and ethos. This is our education program here. It has existed since 1992. If you go to About, this is the trifold mission of ESRI. It's an organization composed of people. It's not a perfect organization, but the goals have always been these 3 things: education, science, and sustainability. So again, think about, including my organization in your future plans. We need some good people from UCD, well, but so does academia, and so does government agencies, and so do nonprofits. So, but please keep us in the mix, okay? All right, that said, thinking about, okay, what do you want to do once you get out of UCD? There are lots of things that geographers do. One of the earlier articles that I remember reading is way back in UBEAK from American Geographical Society. It was, Raphael, you might remember this one, Hidden Geographers. So it interviewed the geographer from Smuckers, and the geographer that works at United Airlines, and the geographer that worked at, Chick-fil-A, et cetera. So the point is, there are lots of good pathways. And again, if we can reach these goals of pervasive use of GIS, then we are going to see a lot more opportunities open up for all you students out there. You won't necessarily have geographer or GIS analyst or cartographer, or as in your job title. You might be a wildlife biologist. You might be marketing coordinator. You might be a health official, but you're going to be using these tools and the spatial thinking and perspectives. So what I spend most of my time doing is writing curriculum, writing articles, attending events, and basically doing all I can to promote and support use of geotechnologies and geographic thinking throughout education, and then by extension in broader society. I won't bore you with all the details, but let's get down to the one of the themes here today, and that is the 5 forces that I believe are really important to our our times, okay? And they are geoawareness, geoenablement, geotechnologies, citizen science, and storytelling. And you may debate these, that's fine. You know how you see all these top 5, top 10 lists? The top 10 places to go in Colorado before you die, right? The top 10 coolest bands of all time. I mean, they're debatable, these lists. So I welcome your input on this. They may not be your 5. But I just submit to you all that geo-awareness is at an all-time high. As I mentioned at the beginning, the things that you and I care about as geo people, the general public is now starting to have those conversations. And this wasn't the case not too long ago, but people are talking about crime and traffic and urban growth and sustainable development and climate and energy, right? People are talking about those issues now. And so it's actually good for us in the geo community because the geo awareness is at an all-time high. I like what Alistair Bonnet talked about. You know, geography is about human survival. It's a critical discipline and it's a critical perspective. And here's one of the things that I wanted to nudge you, lest you think that hey, everything's good, I'm good. Geography and geotechnologies are still rather misunderstood and undervalued. So what can we do about that? I just submit that as a problem for you to chew on, because it's not just going to be a couple people solving that challenge. It's going to be all of us. Secondly, geotechnologies themselves having evolved into this platform-driven interface, right? And set of tools with data, with metadata, with analysis capabilities, etc., running in large part in this web-based, cloud-based environment. Why is that important? Well, gosh, think about the things that you do now that are cloud-based. You've got your music online, right? You might have some on your local device, but you've got the ability to listen to ABBA's greatest hits, right, Amanda? For those of you that don't know, ABBA was a band, okay? The point is you've got your music online. And then think about you working with documents, spreadsheets, word process documents. You've got a lot of that stuff is in Google Drive or OneDrive, right? You're working on a project with someone and you want to collaborate, you're using cloud-based tools. So it's great to have those documents online. It's great to have your music online. I just submit to you all that it's even better to have geotechnologies in this largely cloud-driven environment. And one of the reasons is because you've got lots more storage, right? For years, people in GIS were stymied because we'd never had enough storage. Right, Raphael? We were always like, we don't have enough capabilities. We don't have enough processing power. We don't have enough storage. And now a lot of those technical issues are reduced, okay? There's still some challenges, to be sure, but a lot of those technical issues are reduced. But even better, though, is that we can collaborate. And all these issues and problems that you and I are facing on our planet, energy, water, health, etc., they're interdisciplinary problems, for one thing. They're not just confined to geography or economics or sociology or history, right? They're multidisciplinary. And they're not just confined to one political entity, right? They're not just a county thing or a state thing or a national thing. They transcend political boundaries. They also transcend physical boundaries. They're not just one watershed or one ecoregion, right? So it's important that we have multiple disciplines, this diversity of thought, weighing in on these inherently geospatial and geographical problems. So that's why I really believe that having these tools and these data sets and these capabilities in largely a cloud-based format and environment is the way that we're going to deal with and grapple with and solve these problems. That to me is a huge leap forward. I wish I could get excited about this. Okay, now Jack Dangerman, my boss's boss, right, president of Esri, he likes to refer to GIS as the nervous system for the planet, which I think is a good analogy because your body has a nervous system without which your vital organs wouldn't be functioning. And GIS is operating behind the scenes, right? You don't just kind of think about your nervous system all the time. And just like GIS, right, it's powering RTD in Denver. It's powering the elevator. It's powering the electricity. It's powering your computer right now, right? It powered your device, right? Your supply chain management to get your device assembled. All that stuff, all those business workflows. What you ate today, etc. Right? It's behind everything. People don't think about it. It's kind of like an elevator. You get in the elevator, you don't think about, you push buttons and things happen. You don't really think about it. That's what geotechnologies is operating behind the scenes, enabling our modern society. So it is, in that sense, a intelligent nervous system. Okay, so that being said, GIS is all around us. I'm not going to play this video, but there's no way that the spacecraft could have landed on this barge without geotechnologies, right? It's all about location, patterns, relationships, trends. And this whole platform evolution, I think, is huge. It took a long time to get there. But you students that are in this now, be thankful that you've got some challenges, some tech challenges, but you didn't have to slog through 3 days later, I finally have my points on top of my image, that kind of stuff. When our points would actually be on the actual locations we were in the field, we used to rejoice. Wow, look at that, it's incredible. Of course, now you say, well, of course they're going to be there. Why wouldn't they be there? So it's been a long time coming, but we're standing on the shoulders of some giants that made it happen. And what's exciting to me is that this platform, Cloud GIS, is leveraging many trends in society: data science, artificial intelligence, more about that later, open data portals, etc. Okay, in other words, the way I think about it, geotechnologies, let's say in a typical organization, let's say the city and county of Denver, okay, just down the street from UCD. It used to be like this: hey, you want a map or some geodatabase results? Yeah, the GIS people, they're down the hall and to the right. They're a little geeky and they eat out of vending machines, but they're good people. Go see them. Now, in a typical organization, more people are actually empowered to use GIS. They don't have to be necessarily the deep experts, but they are empowered in some ways to create school bus routes, or I want to locate a business or a service in Denver, and I need to pull up some consumer preferences, some population, my competition. So, things like that. More and more people are empowered to use GIS in an organization, whether it's a government or a private industry or a nonprofit. And again, having the ability to tap into other developments in IT, like the Internet of Things, feeding us information about those real-time wildfire perimeters, or the stream flow in your local river, or the weather that's going to happen next Tuesday when it's going to be 48 degrees F, etc. Right? We've got the ability to tap into those feeds because people want to make real-time or near real-time decisions with that information now. So this GIS phenomenon is really changing the way organizations work, and I think it's pretty exciting. And people are collaborating as they never were before. And it's got huge implications for society. And you can see organizations adopting this. Take a look at some of these data portals. A lot of them are using something called Arcgis Hub, which is a method of engaging the citizens in, okay, I want to have data, but I also want to provide input to my city. Oh, there's a broken sidewalk. There's a street light that's out, or whatever it is, okay? There's a branch in the middle of this bike trail. So these hubs are emerging as a way for people to serve up the information. And web maps are starting to be the way people communicate. Take a look at, there's an interesting blurring of what is a map versus what is a visualization, like the flowing data blog. Take a look at that. Some of those things are really fascinating. So people that were not even, they never took a geography course, maybe since 7th grade, they're making visualizations, and some of them are really quite compelling. I think it's a good opportunity for us as the geography community, for maybe there's some of those things that we would say, well, maybe you need to change the classification method or use a different color scheme or something. That's where we can inform that community, but they can also inform us about really creative ways to visualize. And I think it's just a fascinating, also GIS is being used to, this is a fun one, an educational one that I created, East Dakota, West Dakota. What if we had that instead of North and South Dakota? What would the population be in each one of these states? Okay, East Dakota would have been a lot larger for one thing. But the point is, GIS is being used to visualize, well, what if this variable changed? Or what if that variable changed? And what if I use this model instead of that model? So really planning, not just reflecting what is, but what could be. How should we develop Denver Metro if we're going to have 8 million people in Colorado? What do these cities need to look like, and how do we provide goods and services and some living space for people and some recreational activities that we all moved to Colorado to enjoy, right? So And look at these states that Jefferson proposed. I love these. These are 2 degrees in latitude. I love some of these names. Anyway, fascinating. Now, let's interrupt our 5 forces to talk about what I believe to be 5 key trends here in GIS. And again, you might debate these, you might not agree with these, but I just submit that we've got a 3D world and it makes sense that we've got 3D analytics. We've had 3D visualization for a long time, but now we've got actually 3D analytical tools. That is a huge leap forward. Also, the merging or the blurring of the lines between GIS, building information management, the architectural engineering and construction community, and computer-aided drafting or computer-aided design. Now, Jack Dangerman, the ESRI president, and the Autodesk CEO got together 3 years ago or so now and said, look, we've got to be working together. We spend most of our time indoors. It doesn't make sense for the GIS and the CAD engineering communities to be completely separate. And they weren't completely separate, but it was very difficult to kind of work together. And now with some of the tools that are emerging, like ArcGIS Urban, are the results of such a summit. So you've got these architectural and engineering drawings that are now being situated in real space instead of some made-up coordinate system of their own. And that's really good because, well, think of this. Let's say you are all on campus right now and there's some sort of, I don't know, a tornado that goes through UCD and it's 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Where are all the students? Where are the emergency exits? Where are the emergency shelters? And it changes. It changes every semester, right? Based on classroom configuration and what classes you're teaching. So to have the integrated model of a campus like that, like yours, is really critical. So that is exciting to me. Also, I mentioned this a bit ago, but having the ability to ingest these real-time feeds is huge for GIS. GIS was always stymied by the things I mentioned earlier, but it was also hindered by, where do I get data? So for example, me in the education world, I had a lesson that I taught for years on weather, and I had a static data set from 2004. And then a couple years ago, I said, hey, Joseph, you've got ArcGIS Online. Why don't you use the real-time weather feed and teach the lesson on weather with the real-time feed? You know, so I've got pressure, temperature, and wind speed and wind direction in my lesson now, as of basically 5 minutes ago, instead of from 2004. Not to say that that's not valuable to look at historical data for sure, but again, the ability to ingest these data streams are quite exciting. And it also changes our whole workflow in many ways, right? Not just in education, but think of, you know, the standard workflow in GIS was, you know, find data, download it, process it, do analysis. And depending on the data set, it might take you days to process it, the projections, the attributes, et cetera. And I'm not saying that's all super easy now, but increasingly you've got these web services, so you can actually stream the data down. So just one practical example, you know, I used to work at the USGS and I love those digital elevation models. Well, if I was going to do a slope and aspect on a slope like this behind me, I'd download the USGS, you know, individual 7.5 minute by 7.5 minute tiles of DEMs, and I'd stitch them together and compute slope and aspect. Guess what? Elevation is a service. Slope is a service. Aspect is a service. Now, sure, there are some bandwidth limitations. Okay, you wouldn't want to. You've got to be sensitive to your, you know, what you're consuming out there in terms of bandwidth. And okay, what if that service moves? What if it goes down when I really need it? Okay, there's considerations, but increasingly you've got these data services, and it reduces the processing time and allows you to get to the analysis stage more quickly, which is really exciting. And this whole idea of enterprise and web GIS, I mentioned it a bit ago. What I mean by enterprise is GIS being used throughout an organization. In an enterprise asset, people are valuing geospatial technology and geospatial data throughout an organization. It's not just 1 or 2 departments. And then finally, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so as a illustration of that, picture my data, my video here at South Dakota State University. So imagine a typical video like this on your campus, for example. Yeah, this was at the end of February. They get a lot of snow up there. Anyway, the point is, what if every tree, every shrub, every curb could be captured by a video like that and then automatically geo-encoded? Wow. That's pretty exciting. That means that your typical GIS entry-level job is going to radically change. In fact, it already started having, it has already started changing. So your typical, you know, data entry and, you know, all the sewer lines, all the fire hydrants, all the electrical lines in the community, those were tedious jobs, and they still are. But increasingly, we're going to be able to capture things just with an ordinary, you know, street, you know, a video of the city vehicle going down all the streets and capturing every single thing in a day. And there it is. Okay, and that definitely changes some of the jobs that are out there that use geospatial technology, I think, for the better. Again, be critical of the data, though. Don't just accept all these data streams and not do any quality control on it. But as part of this whole geoenablement thing, I view GIS as sort of this transformational technology. And think of 1910, okay, 110 years ago. You had motion pictures now starting to emerge, 1920-ish, okay? And first they were filming stage plays. You know, they were the way of communicating throughout the 19th century, and then, you know, it still exists today, of course, but to communicate a story was to put on a play. And so the early motion pictures was, oh, we're gonna film stage plays. And then motion pictures became its own industry, its own art form. So because people said, hey, I can go outside and film. I don't have to film a stage play. I can take it anywhere I want. So then it became a transformational kind of technology. Same with GIS. In the early days, it was all largely replicating what we were doing with manual cartography. And then as we moved into digital cartography, GIS was a way to create digital maps. Okay, and largely they were the same kind of maps that we were making before. But then I would just submit around late 90s, 2000-ish, GIS started being really creative. We can do things we never could do with paper maps. And so now you've got all of these incredible visualizations and pattern analysis and so on that you never had before. So it's really a transformational technology and spreading into new fields, as I mentioned before. Now, in terms of your own personal development, I've got some things in here, one of which I'll highlight, and that is you want to keep being a lifelong learner in geotechnologies, right? It's a rapidly changing, evolving field. Ditto for geography. How do you learn? How do you keep moving forward? Even things that your professors don't ask you to do. Well, one way is with MOOCs, massive open online courses. Just like I talked about earlier, be critical of these courses. You know, there's a lot out there, and some are good quality and some are not. I'd like to think that these S3 MOOCs are very high quality, and they're very much like what you would get at a university. They're supplemental to what you could get at a university like yours. So there are ways for you to keep moving forward in spatial analysis, in cartography, et cetera. And there are also ways for you to tell colleagues of yours, hey, I know you're not enrolled in the geography program at UCD, but there's some resources for you to actually learn about this stuff. Free, you know, rigorous. You're in there with a group of colleagues, so you're getting some networking in. Anyway, there's a lot of opportunities out there to keep your learning moving forward, even after you graduate. Now, I just also, yeah.
A quick interruption. I think that there is a question that I think is pertinent to this point in your presentation by Brian Wade. Do you want to jump in, Brian?
Now or later, Raphael? I mean,
you want to do later? Okay, so the question relates to how the GIS can model human environment interactions, but it's up to you. You want to answer now or
maybe I'll hold off till the end of the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
No worries.
Thank you.
All right.
And how's everybody doing? Are people like checking their email and you're totally disengaged? Hopefully not. Hopefully this will say, gosh, this is so exciting. It's such an exciting time to be in this. And that's what I really want to impart to you all, that if you don't listen to anything else, you're in the best place at the best time in really one of the top-notch universities. So I salute all of you students for choosing the program that you have. I mean, these colleagues of mine, we've been colleagues for a long time, and I have great respect for all of them. And like me, they are really keen on these three legs of the stool. You know, you're not just learning tech. You're not just learning GIS-y skills when you're learning with GIS or you're developing your geoliteracy skills. You're learning skills in communication. You're learning skills in working with others and solving problems and those sorts of skills. But you're also learning content. So even picturing that map that I had a moment ago, you might be learning about natural hazards or population density or ecoregions while you're using these tools. So you're never just learning overlay and buffer and geocoding. You're actually doing it in the context of a real problem or issue. So you're learning some content as well. And overarching that, the third leg of the stool there, you're using the geographic perspective. Why are things where they are? What did it look like in the past? And what should it look like in the future? And that, to me, is the benefit and why the geospatial perspective is so important in our 21st century world, because we tend to get really specialized in our disciplines. And sure, there are soil geographers, there are population geographers, but geography has always been valued because it's a holistic thinking sort of a thing. We look at, you know, the whole world and everything in it. It's a grand task. It's a high calling, but don't lose that. Okay, sure, you have some specializations, but your employer is going to say, we need problem solvers. We need people to look at the big picture, and that's what I think is one of the key values, and always has been, with geography. And it's not just me saying this. I mean, you can look at reports like Learning to Think Spatially, and I had a conversation with one of your faculty colleagues, Raphael, about, you know, how do we work with K-12 education. This report really lays out why and how we do that and why it is important. So that's critical also. I also have in this presentation, which is, I'm going to paste in the chat box, by the way. This whole thing is a what? What am I presenting with?
Story map.
It's a story map, exactly. So sure, I use Prezi, I use PowerPoint, I use Microsoft Sway, I use other tools, but oftentimes I teach with a story map, because then I can do things like, you know, I can give you this quiz. I already gave you a quiz, but let me just give you one. Okay, waterfalls. Victoria Falls, Angel Falls, or Niagara Falls. Again, you're thinking spatially and you're piecing together what you know about places and also direction. So north is at the top of this image. If I change the scale, would that help? Ooh, let's look at the vegetation there. Fascinating. Interesting. What if I zoomed out? Now, this is going to be too easy if I zoom out. I'll zoom out anyway in the interest of time. Okay. Now you know what it is. Anybody would like to type in the chat box, feel free. But I've got this whole quiz is in ArcGIS Online. It's called the presentation mode. And it's a simple way of communicating, but it's embedded in my story map. Yeah, Victoria Falls, awesome, awesome. And I've got others in there if you'd like to. You'll be Saturday afternoon, you'll be emailing me, Joseph, I took the rest of that quiz. Cool, I'll say. Another thing that you might want to pay attention to as you students move forward in your career is, I've been working with these geotechnology folks over at the community college level for quite a few years. The geospatial technology competency model is a really good one for you to latch onto and pay attention to, because it lays out what kinds of competencies personally and also organizationally that you should think about developing. And then you could look at this and say, where do I have gaps? And how do I fill those gaps, either with my UCD courses or on my own? What I like most about this is the very bottom of this competency model. It's personal competencies. Are you organized? Are you ethical? Do you know how to communicate? Are you reliable? You know, so that's like the basis of the whole pyramid, and that's one of the reasons why I like that. I also want you students to think about, you know, what's your nudge moment? Why are you at UCD right now in the geography program? Or maybe some of you aren't, but the point is you're involved with higher education. And there must have been something, you know, in your youth, maybe you had a teacher, a professor in the past, a book you read. For me, it was reading The Last Great Auk. That was one of them. I read that every year as a middle school student. And it's all about the sad demise of these wonderful flightless birds that swam from Iceland to North Carolina and back every year. And so the book kind of personalizes the last family of these things. And I knew what was going to happen. I was going to get to 1844, and the last three were going to be clubbed to death, and that was it for the great auks. That was the last three that existed. And you know, inside I was like, how could we let this happen? And then, what can I maybe do about this situation like this? Also, the second thing for me is, growing up in this Western Colorado landscape, I love to get outside. And that is one of the things I think is important. Richard Louv talks about that, Last Child in the Woods, the importance of getting students outside when they're young and having deep immersive experiences in the natural world. Nothing wrong with soccer fields and playgrounds, but getting out into a riparian zone or out there in the book cliffs of Colorado here, etc. Now, I'm in the world of education, and we are making some progress here. We've got a lot of educators that are using GIS in these other disciplines that we never had before. I'm working with the Carey School of Business at the Arizona State University, for example. Guess how many students are in the Carey School of Business? They're actually advertising on the radio. 16,000. So if even a fraction of those, let's say we get 10% of the students taking what they call location analytics, basically GIS. If that's 1,600 students right there making more effective decisions when they graduate in their business world, that's huge. That's a huge influence on society. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about doing this. And in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over a couple of these things. Why did I take this photo? What is this thing, by the way? Some of you know. Now it's a doorstop, but it began life as an old Mac. It's an old computer. Now it's a doorstop at an actual high school. The point is, don't get too attached to the tools. This precious phone of yours, it'll be a paperweight someday. This computer you're using, etc. Right? It's this that you want to develop. This is the most important tool of all, your brain, and you being able to solve problems. And to solve problems maybe that your professor, and in the future, your employer is not even asking you to solve. Looking for other things that you can solve. Now here's my tiny little secret. It's so tiny, it's in tiny little text. This is me coming out of a cave in New Mexico. But the tiny little secret is that geospatial technology is actually too good to just be in one department. It needs to be in multiple departments in multiple universities. And reflecting on what I was talking about with Richard Louv, I think it's important to actually enjoy the environment, not just always to collect data. Yeah, you might be collecting at the same time, but really enjoy the environment. It's a wonderfully diverse earth that we have here, and take some time to enjoy it. Many of you are in Colorado, and it's a great place to be doing that. And the fourth, you're probably saying, Joseph, when are you going to get to these forces again? My gosh, you're torturing me. Anyway, the fourth one is citizen science. I talked about Survey 123 earlier. It's a citizen science enabled tool. When Survey 123 became crowdsourceable, that to me was, I had the geo-tingles. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, incredible. The point is, with these tools, the person at the other end doesn't need to know about GIS necessarily. They don't need to be logged into your ArcGIS online organization. You can crowdsource or citizen science these things so people can collect data on pine beetle infestation in Colorado, or walkability, or in this case, trees, light poles, and all the other living and non-living infrastructure in a community. That's really powerful to be able to do that. So, OpenStreetMap, eBird, Globe.gov, I mean, these are all citizen science enabled initiatives, and they're just going to be exploding now because they can now instantly map and then analyze. I say analyze because oftentimes people say, hey, Joseph, I've got my points on a map. Great. And? Right? And? The point is, the map is not the end goal. Now you're going to be tweeting, Joseph said the map is not the end goal. The point is to understand better, right? To understand in a richer, deeper way. Yeah, get your data onto maps, but then you keep going. Don't just say, well, my points are on a map, great, or my lines or my polygons or my images, cool, and keep moving forward. The point is deeper understanding and solving problems. Now, storytelling with maps, as you correctly identified, I'm using a story map to give this presentation. Hopefully it was an effective way to do that. But the idea, though, of, for example, in this case, I was looking at a proposed new trail in this community in Iowa, using a story map to do that, to have citizens look at, okay, is that the best place for this proposed trail? So on another more local to home, okay, here's my geocaching course. I'm using ArcGIS Online to do that too. So it is it's up in Boulder Open Space. Well, lots of ways to communicate what we're passionate about. Now, what's your story? Again, think about your nudge moment. For me, it was actually growing up in this motel. Joseph, why did you grow up in a motel? Well, my folks owned it. My mother was also a school teacher at a K-12 school. But my folks ran this business, and so I got to meet people from all over the world. We actually lived there. Have you ever stayed in a hotel where that there's like an apartment right behind the office? That was the kind of motel that we lived in. Yeah, so we had people coming in from all over the world that stay there, and that would kind of fostered my love for, hey, different cultures, different environments, different people that come here, and we get to meet people from all over the world. What a cool childhood. And instead of having a lawn, I had a parking lot, but it was the best way for a future geographer to grow up. And also these geeky maps that you see here, these are the things that I did as a teenager. I drew maps of made up places. Now look at those numbers in the margins. 4200 north. What are those? Address ranges. What kid cares about address ranges? What kid even knows about address ranges? That's the 4200 block. This is the 3500 block, and there's 7 blocks in between. I was fascinated by stuff like that. So I just encourage you, you may be doing some geeky, nerdy things that maybe none of your friends care about. Do them anyway. Do them anyway. So seize the opportunities, lots of opportunities out there to keep moving forward. I want to quickly encourage you to think about the following. Here are my top 5 skills that I believe are important as you move forward here. First of all, be curious about the world. I touched on this earlier, but ask questions even that your professors and even your employers don't ask you to grapple with. Because that's going to drive you forward in using tools and getting in the field and using new methods and so on. Being able to work with data, as I touched on earlier with that Spatial Reserves data blog, I think is extremely important as we have this cloud-based platform at our fingertips. And understand the ethical implications of the power that you have to shape the opinion of people consuming your maps. Because it's no longer just you publish your article in a journal and 50 people read it. Well, for the UCD colleagues of mine, probably hundreds of people read your articles. But the point is, all of us now have this global audience, potentially, for anything that we do if we share it through these web-based tools. So use that with caution and make sure that you know what you're doing. Hey, I've got tornadoes and I've got mobile homes. Can I divide tornadoes by mobile homes and get the number of tornadoes that hit mobile homes? No, that's not what you're getting at all. The GIS will do it, but it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so really understand your data and know how to present it. Also, know your geographic and geotechnical foundations. And that's, I think, one of the values that you get from going through a rigorous program like at UCD. You're getting those foundations. So you're going to be in that zone that I call the few people in an organization that understand the breadth and depth of geographic thinking and geotechnologies. There's going to be a lot of people that I think, as I hopefully laid the case for earlier, that know a little bit about geographic thinking and geotechnologies. The marketing analysts and maybe the health professionals, they know a little bit about geotechnologies, enough to do some analysis. You're going to know a lot about them and being able to use them and being able to advise those folks that are like, well, okay, I'm going to use it a little bit, but I really don't know exactly what I'm doing. Can you advise me? And also adaptability, I think, is really important in our world. Be flexible, be willing to go international, being willing to go outside your disciplinary comfort zone. Next time there's a conference, go to a track that is completely outside of your own area of interest or expertise. So at AAG a couple years ago, I went to a social work track, and I learned a lot about the people and the methods and the tools that they use. It was fascinating. So, and then finally, good communication. Have a vision. Don't let go of your dreams. Find an organization that, at least in some ways, matches your personal ethos, as I talked about earlier. And I believe without spatial thinking and geotechnologies, it's like sleepwalking into the future. That we're sort of stumbling around. On the other hand, I believe that you folks out there, you students, you are giving me great hope for the future, because we've got good tools at our fingertips. You've got really good mentors and advisors there at UCD. We've got some amazing technologies at our fingertips. And we've got some really deep, serious, complex problems to solve, many of which, probably all of which I would submit, have a geographic component to them. And so you, being in geo land, geography, can help solve those problems. You have a critical role. All right, folks. I hope that was of interest and got you thinking about some things perhaps that you hadn't thought about ever or in a while. Questions, comments, complaints?
Awesome. Could you stop sharing the
Absolutely.
You can see all the folks There you are. Now we're back and you can see everybody. Perfect. Yeah, that was very interesting, Joseph. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. So again, we now open up for questions, comments, and just unmute your computer and go ahead.
Can I ask a question, Rafael?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Hey, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. And I have to run here in a few minutes, so that's why I want to get my question out.
No worries. Thanks.
No, thank you for the great talk. I just was curious. Actually, it's a very specific and actually somewhat selfish question. I'm interested in some of the utility of story maps and things like that to tell stories. And I won't go into detail what research I want to apply this to in the specifics there. But I'm just wondering if you could speak to the utility of story maps as compared to other types, other approaches to storytelling that you might be familiar with. Because some of the work I've done in the past that's been sort of interactive, dynamic type visualizations that people can work with has been, it was done decades ago and it was using Flash technology. And so I just wondering now, what are some of the other tools besides story maps, or perhaps story maps is the best one to work with if you're trying to embed in images, video, interactive, moving around maps, bringing up, interviews or whatever it might be. I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure, Gregory. Thanks for asking. I think to me, it comes down to you pick the most appropriate tool for the job. And just in terms of, spatial analysis, for example, ArcGIS Online, for example, has 45 analytical tools. It doesn't do GWR regression. Okay, you need Pro or something else to do that. So again, for many people, ArcGIS Online is going to meet their needs. And for others, you need additional capabilities. So coming back to presentation kinds of tools, just on the let me just select a few here as comparison. Story maps are template driven. They're very simple. I mean, picture non-geography people saying, "Oh, I get it. I can hit the plus sign and then add things in there." So you're getting some capability, but you're not allowed to customize that much. So the trade-offs are, it's really fast to create one, but you don't have a lot of capabilities. On the other end of the scale would be something like Web App Builder or the new Experience Builder. So those tools give you additional capabilities. I shouldn't say on the other end, midway. You get additional capabilities. It takes more time, but you've got a lot more choices. But you can build something that maybe you couldn't do in a story map in this, Experience Builder or even Arcgis Hub or the Web App Builder. Continuing on that spectrum, if you get into JavaScript, Python, and some coding behind those web maps, then you've got full capability, right, of customizing exactly what you want. So the reason why there's a 1.25 million story maps out there is because most people are at that, sort of that end over here. They want something really fast. I'm working for the, city, Parks and Rec, and, I got to get something to my boss in an hour. Okay. So again, to me, it's like, okay, there's lots of different zones where you can construct these sort of multimedia web maps. And I would just say, it really depends on, your goals, how much time you have, how much capability you want, and so on. As we move forward, all of these three, I guess they're the three things that I laid out, they're all rapidly evolving, right? So the things that people say, Joseph, why can't I do this in story maps now? I say, well, okay, you can't do that right now, but probably in the next quarterly, update, you probably can do that. So, that's the whole idea of yeah, it's good that we have these tools. It's also slightly disconcerting because you're not. That's lifelong learning, right? We're not going to get to the point where we really know all of geotechnologies. Like way back when, it was like there was this stack of manuals, and if you learn that stack of manuals, you pretty much knew most of what GIS could do. And of course, nowadays. I don't pine for the old days, no way. But that's why we need each other, right? So you might know, something that, hey, I don't know how to do that, but Gregory knows. I'm going to ask Gregory, how do I do that? Because I get people that, this is all very humbling, right, folks, that we're in this, it's good. It's a good thing. I get people that coming up, graduate students, undergraduates. Joseph, why are you doing it that way? There's a better way to do that. Oh, really? Oh, show me. And they've been using GIS for, 2 years or a semester, and I've been using GIS since, the late Cretaceous. But that's why we're all here and why we're all need each other. I don't know if that's fully answering your question, Gregory, but take a look at, there's the classic story maps and then there's the new story maps. The new ones are about a year old. The new ones don't have as many capabilities as the classic ones do yet, but they're getting there and it's much easier interface wise to use. So
thanks, that was
all
great.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes, please go ahead, Brian.
Joseph, this was a great presentation. Thank you so much. I always enjoy this.
Dr. Wee, you're so awesome. Thanks.
And it's interesting you mentioned this because just this week I've been talking with my class about geographic perspectives in science. And we actually talked about how space matters in environmental science and in what ways that happens. But I'm curious because I'm interested in, as a novice, very, very novice person with GIS, I'm curious in trying to integrate more qualitative data into these tools. And I'm wondering if I'm interested in crowdsourcing. So if I'm interested in understanding how members of the general public feel about a particular place. So if I'm trying to understand the emotions of people, what recommendations do you have for a crowdsourcing tool that will allow me to understand people's emotional connections to a particular location?
Sure. I mean, I remember some of the past research that you've done, and that's how I basically barged into your office that one day years ago and said, wow, this is incredible what you're doing. In the past, as you know, as many of us know, GIS was really heavily criticized for being too positivistic. It is only quantitative data. Nowadays, I wouldn't say that we've completely gone to the middle where you can ingest easily both. It's still heavily influenced by quantitative. However, I like to raise the example of, I work a lot with K through 12 education, and one of the students created a map of her campus where it's social zones. Where do you hang out at lunch? So the map was created where it was the band students hung out over here, the football players hung out over here, the sort of the geeky, the algebra types hung out. It was all based on a survey about where you hang out and where do you feel comfortable hanging out. So there are some ways that you can do that, and then it comes, as we know, the challenge then is, how do I symbolize that? It's not a hard and fast boundary between these things. So there's some interest, and that's another, I think, good development with GIS is that there are, it was also criticized in the early years for being, these are ugly maps. These are horrible maps. I could do way better, with my traditional cartography. But now you've got some really interesting ways of symbolizing things with these tools that might serve to draw out the kinds of impressions that you want that you're displaying. And then also, another interesting thing about all of this is that, okay, do I really show where people have responded? It's that whole location privacy thing. Occasionally I'll get very well-intentioned middle school teachers that say, hey, Joseph, here's all my students on their locations on the map. Don't make that public. Don't share that. So it's, with the tools are very rapidly advancing, and sometimes the considerations that people are thinking about or not thinking about are very real. And so again, that's the kind of thing where it's great. We've got these capabilities of, okay, in that case, that teacher should just share that map with that school organization and nobody outside. Ditto for, I'm a caver. You saw my cave pictures. You're not going to make a map with cave. There's a Cave Protection Act, tribal sacred sites, etc. So there's all kinds of interesting because we have the capability of mapping things, you know, how do we display them and what do we display, and do we shift the actual locations and all that sort of thing. Anyway, lots we could talk about, but I'd be happy to chat with you, you know, after this, and I'd love to get an update too on the good, you know, interesting research that you're doing.
Thank you, Joseph.
But yes, when Survey 123 had the crowdsourcing capability, that to me put it on the level of something like eBird or iNaturalist, because before, all of our tools, all the S3 field tools, where you had to be signed in and you had to know a little bit about GIS to even set up something like that. In the first place, you had to know what a geodatabase was, and a feature class, and a domain and a subtype, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't care about any of that. I just want to deploy my survey. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments at this point?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello. So it sounds like one of your roles is to help build partnerships between the Esri and other organizations, and I'm wondering if you can speak to how you build that. I'm really interested in like how we can break down some of the data silos, especially in natural resource management. So yeah, I'm wondering if you could just speak to that for a second.
Yeah, a couple things. Are you on faculty there, Sarah?
No, I'm a
You're
student.
a student. Okay, cool. One of the things is, as you think about your future, career path, what I didn't mention is that, yes, I'd love to have, our organization in the mix for people to consider, but also we have a whole network of like 300 business partners. It's in the partner network, and some of them are very specialized. For example, one of my favorites is Fish Views. So you know about Google Street Views, right? Well, Fish Views is, hey, there's a company that goes and takes underwater footage of your city's estuaries, rivers, creeks, etc., to see, what the water quality is, if this is suitable for an urban greenway, etc. So that's their extremely focused area. But they have, maybe 5 employees. But the point is, there's a lot of really fascinating partners of ours that do some really interesting work in this area. And they're, as well, back on the partnerships, we definitely partner with the Nature Conservancy and the Jane Goodall Elephant Foundation and E.O. Wilson's Half Earth Foundation and so on and so forth. And I agree with you. Partnerships are the way that we're going to solve these problems. And what's interesting, I think, is that, today, and this isn't just in the last 6 months with the issues that we're encountering now, but I think there's a new era in companies, paying attention to their environmental ethic. I mean, Esri has always been, Environmental Systems Research Institute, but even, Microsoft and Apple and, and so on, they're, hey, we're going to not just care about, corporate earnings and stuff like that, but we're going to think about our imprint on the planet and develop sustainable practices. Ditto for universities, right? I mean, every university's got a sustainability program that manifests itself in various ways. But I think it's an exciting time for you to be in this. So yes, we also have a nonprofit program, Sarah. It's as old as our education program. And so if a nonprofit said, we don't have any money for any software, we're like, okay, here's a donation, or here's a very, greatly reduced rate. I mean, the point is we want these tools to get into people's hands. And I don't know if this is answering your question or not, but definitely the whole idea, a lot of what I and others do is, build. I'll just be totally honest. Sometimes people, Sarah, will say, hey, Joseph, can you fund our lab so you can get Esri's name on the lab door? I'm like, well, we don't care about having our name on buildings or doors. What we care about is, student learning and faculty engagement and, long-term change. And so that takes a long time to, develop that whole trusted partnership relationship with universities, tribal governments, and others. But I think it's infinitely more valuable than, oh, here's this money and we'll have our name on something. It's different from what some organizations want to do, and I totally respect, the other ways of doing things as well. But yeah, you're right. It's all about the partnerships. We're partnering with National Geographic, for example, on a whole series of lessons and resources for, we've done that for years, but get Nat Geo, as a partner. A lot of educators, go there and they're learning about, I'm going to teach about ecoregions or climate or population change. And by the way, they're using some geotechnologies, right? So they're developing spatial thinking in their students, and they're not stuck to this, 1975 map of ecoregions in their textbook. I mean, nothing against textbooks and nothing against 1975. I mean, I love the Bee Gees. That was a band, Sarah. Anyway, the point is, they're not confined to that thing. They can actually have an interactive experience for their students.
Thank you.
So, any other questions or comments at this point? We have probably time for one or two more. I have one. If nobody wants to take the chance for the last few minutes. Okay, so yeah, the Bee Gees. That's good. I remember that. So I just piggybacking on Brian's wee question, the issue of how to address the human dimensions of a study through technology, and to your book Tribal GIS, right? And so writing that, all these issues of how all these cultural and social constructs are being incorporated in the use of that technology. That's something that always has been around, but what can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, good point. I would say we're at the point where if we do this correctly, the entire geography geospatial community, we are going to be on this sort of inflection point with lots more rapid adoption of spatial thinking geotechnologies. And by doing that, we're going to have additional disciplines in on this. I mean, the digital humanities community, they're starting to say, we want to do this stuff. I was at Clemson last fall, and they have a new PhD in digital history. Now, you may argue that, okay, there's a lot of digital history around, but it's an actual program, and they're embracing things like there's a collection of digital humanities story maps that you can dig into for those of you that want to take a look at that. Anyway, the point is, there's the geospatial community, the geographic community, is in this really exciting time where we're actually in dialogue with a lot of the other disciplines. And disciplines are, they were created and for good or bad. I mean, there were some there's some use in them, right? You have departments and you have courses and you have funded programs and all that stuff. But as you students that are thinking about, okay, what am I going to do when I get out of UCD? You're going to be in a multidisciplinary environment with probably people from all over the world, just like at UCD. But the problems are not going to be just natural resources or just sociology or just population. They're going to be touching on a lot of different disciplines. And you students are going to be formulating a lot of the tools that we still need. So Raphael's touching on I think an important point. We're not to the era yet, I don't think, where we can do some of the things that we've always wanted to do with some of the qualitative data and some of the other things, like, for example, that Dr. Wee was talking about. We're not quite there yet. Now, people are developing those tools at my organization and other organizations, but that's why the cloud-based platform has such appeal, because of all of the things that we were challenged with in the past, especially the fact that we couldn't share information very easily. So it's I think a very exciting decade. Yeah, we've got some serious challenges, and I just respect you folks so much for given all the disruption that is in your lives, you faculty, you students, that you still want to innovate, you still want to move forward. And so again, I have great respect for you all.
Thank you for that, Joseph. Well, okay, so thank you so much, guys, for being here. Joseph, this has been a great presentation. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And we are recording it. And we will pass for sure. I'm going to make it, watch it in my modeling class. Go ahead.
Raphael, could we just get Joseph to comment on his favorite BG songs? We're having a chat around the best BG songs.
Oh my gosh, Amanda, I couldn't help it when I said 1975. You know, that was the first thing that came to mind. Amanda, you and Raphael and Peter, you all look exactly the same. It must be good vibrations there at UCD. I mean, you look exactly the same as 20 years ago when you magically appeared from Texas. So anyway, it's good to see you again, my friend. Yep. Well, thanks for having me, folks.
Thank you so much.
Yep,
Yes.
keep in touch, people.
Thank you, Jose.
And when we're traveling again, I'd love to come down to your campus.
Yeah, you should come over and then we will celebrate. Take you out for dinner. We usually do that with our guest speakers, but we a rain check for you.
All right, keep in touch then, folks.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it. I'll stop the recording here.